Hey everybody, welcome to Whiskey, Lead, and Steel, Feelings Hurt While You Wait, the official podcast of Aggressive Defensive Solutions. With me today, Lee Curling, future governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Behind the camera, Amy Curling, future First Lady of the Commonwealth. And I'm Rick Sutton, or so they tell me. So what are we going to talk about, man? It's been a while. You'd said something about YouTube peeing themselves about sponsorship. So we happen to be sitting at the table at Arsenal Performance and Gunworks, who does really good, cool work on guns. If you'd like to get your gun made better, come by here and see them folks. They didn't give us any money to tell them about this. I just think you, the people, should know that there's a good business out there that wants to help you out.
Absolutely.
There we go. Is that's
we're
probably good?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good.
That's my semi-Elon Musk moment there.
Yeah. So I ran across an article on a couple weeks ago, and it's been a little bit since we had a chance to sit down and talk. I've been traveling, you've been traveling, and the last couple of things that we put up has been kind of sitting in the can, and some of it like from posted some stuff in July that was like, hey, Happy New Year. So yeah, that's some old footage we just hadn't gotten around to, right? But saw an article about a security guard, not acting as a security guard, got into an altercation with a couple of teenagers and ended up shooting a kid.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to talk about.
Yep.
We're going to talk through some of the details on that. So it happened in early June. So it is August 17th right now. That way you know when we recorded this. But it happened in early June. Like I said, I saw it a few weeks ago, and it was interesting because I saw one. I sent something to you about it last week, and you started looking into it, and I dug more and more into it. I got 5, 6, 7 articles that I went through on it, and what I found interesting is there's a different take, a little bit of different take from everybody, and you get it all together, and you kind of get an interesting view, kind of.
In fairness to that,
yeah.
Right? One of the things that I learned in the 31 years that I spent as a cop is for every human being you have involved in an event, there's that many plus one more side to the event.
Oh, absolutely.
Because realistically, if you, and I used to tell people this all the time when I was training cops, if two people are standing on a street corner and they watch the same car accident, because they're standing at different angles, they're going to see things a little bit differently. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily wrong or they're embellishing or they're saying wrong shit. It's just from where one person's standing and the other person's standing, they look a little bit different. So when you told me about this, I dug into it and I read several articles, and I was like, yeah, I got to quit this one. I'm going to be down the rabbit hole on this. So from the perspective of, and we talked about this earlier, the guy comes out and he gives his initial statement and he gives his initial story, and in his initial statement and story, a reasonable person goes, yeah, okay, that kind of makes sense.
I would say a reasonable person would probably go, this was an unfortunate set of events. He's going to get jammed up for it.
But I see how it happened.
Yes. Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that's what I meant by that.
Yeah. So this happened in a suburb of Seattle, Washington. Yep. You want to go through his kind of initial take, and then we kind of roll into it. How do we want to talk about this?
So I think realistically, the way to do it is the easiest way to unpack it is I think is we talk about what it is he said, he saw, he observed, and therefore the action that he took.
Yep.
And there are things that we need to dissect about that, right? And the best way to do that is as we go through them. And then once we've done that, I think the thing to do is take a step back, take the other sides of the event, like the one involving a video, and make the analysis. Okay, then here's what we've got here. You know, A plus B equals C. A plus C plus D equals, you know, you're screwed. So we look at that, and then I think there's some things that we ought to talk about that harken back to other conversations that we've had here, pertaining to training and liability and mindset and all the other things that come along with carrying a gun.
Yeah.
Either professionally or for self-defense. So, as I understand it from what I read, and so this guy says his teenage kid is taking martial arts at the dojo in the strip mall. And he does not work for the strip mall and is not connected to the strip mall, is not an agent of the strip mall. He is a professional security guard, which is oxymoronic. But he is sitting in his car. Here becomes the first red flag, providing overwatch, his words, for the parking lot while his kid's in the dojo. He's not in there involved, but he's outside guarding the perimeter, my words. So he's providing overwatch, which we could get into what overwatch actually is and what overwatch really does mean, and how if this guy knows what overwatch is, he realizes that he's not providing overwatch. Anyway, so he sees 3 people, younger people, come walking across the parking lot, headed towards a sporting goods store. And one of them has what appears to be a handgun, possibly a Glock handgun. All right. I'm not from Seattle. I don't know this this sporting goods store, but I know in Virginia, it's not uncommon for sporting goods stores to carry guns, gun-related things, and in fact, airsoft guns and BB guns and that kind of stuff. So, yes, maybe they're going into the sporting goods store to rob the place. Maybe they're going into the sporting goods store to be an active shooter. Maybe they're going to the sporting goods store to return their broken whatever. We don't know. But I get, in this day and age of hyper concern about mass shootings and active shooters and robberies and all that, I get that, you go, that doesn't seem normal. 3 dudes walking across the parking lot while I'm carrying a gun. That seems a little odd. So he sees this, and because he is protecting the parking lot because his son is in there, he takes it upon himself, where he has no jurisdiction and where he has no authority and he has no legal duty to act, to approach them. Now, he says in his initial statement that he did not have time to call 911, right? Flag on the field, call him bullshit, 15 yards. It does not take long to call 911. As a police officer, as a guy who was a police officer for 3 decades, unless I'm taking fire right now, if I'm getting ready off duty to jump out of my car and engage somebody, I'm calling 911 first because I'm minimally going to need backup. Now, that said,
So let me interject an interesting piece there. We always do talk about how long it takes 911 to respond and those types of things. In this specific incident, the local law enforcement was conducting training in that area, heard the gunshots, they responded to the gunshots. They were within earshot of that. So,
But he doesn't know that.
He does not know that. But it is one of those cases that had he called 911, dispatch has law enforcement literally moments away.
Yes.
And again, you're right. He does not know that. And that's an anomaly,
Yeah.
right? But it is one of those things to go, well, I didn't have time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yes.
sometimes law enforcement is minutes away. Sometimes it's 10 minutes away, 30 minutes away, or sometimes it's 30 seconds away.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, but again, I'm going to get on 911.
Call 911. When in doubt, call 911.
Yeah.
Right? First thing, call 911.
Call 911. Get the cavalry started. So anyway, but he says he doesn't have time to call 911. So he jumps out, runs over, pulls his gun, and confronts them. There's 3 of them. There's 1 of him. He believes at least 1 of them is armed. So based on what he is saying at this stage of the game, that kind of makes sense. I can tell you from my past experience as a police officer, there have been times when I was outnumbered and had to stop 5 or 6 guys and stop them at gunpoint. So again, as he's explaining this, you go, not inherently unreasonable so far.
Right.
So apparently he pulls a gun on them, gets them stopped. And at that point in time, even according to him, they start insisting that it's a BB gun. He puts the one with the BB gun on the ground and has him drop the BB gun, puts him on the ground and covers him. Literally, apparently steps over him into a position of physical dominance and orders the other 2 to stand still. One of them starts to back away with his hands up. And as he's backing away and being told not to go anywhere, just pull the plug on it, I guess. Sorry, our coffee machine was making noise at us. So apparently as the guy is moving away, he starts to turn and bring his hands down. At which point in time, this guy said, well, he made a movement towards his waistband with his hand,
Right.
and I thought he was going for something, so I engaged him. Fire 6 rounds. 1 round hits the kid in the side. The other hits him in the back as he turns, and he collapses and down he goes. Kid dies at the scene. Kid turns out not to be armed. It turns out to be an airsoft gun. He's taken into custody, because as you said, cops are close by, that they hear the gun fire and they come to it. They take him into custody and they conduct their investigation, pretty good investigation from what I can tell. And he is facing 2nd-degree murder and 2nd-degree assault charges. And based on everything else that I've read, that seems entirely appropriate. So, from what he's got going on, what he says, let's start unpacking some of this. So, I'm going to throw the first one out for you and get your opinion on this one. For those of you who have not had the opportunity to read Lee's resume, and we'll just skim over the high points. 21 years of military police in the United States Army, couple of tours downrange, team leader, platoon leader, and then first sergeant. So Lee's been around the block for a while with the military when it comes to military operations and law enforcement operations, and was also at one point in time a deputy sheriff. So he's also got some civilian law enforcement experience. So tell me, well, not tell me because I know, tell these nice folks who may not know what Overwatch is a reference to?
Overwatch, in my world, in the military, is
The real world.
is a military, generally a combat operations. It is a security. It is a security activity where you are providing. You're providing security.
On-call lethal force.
Generally you're providing security for a breaching force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to say it in a simple way. Yeah.
So then from my parlance, so from a Marine Corps experience, parlance, protective service detail
Would have
operations, and then some of the activities that we do as police officers, right? If you have a civil disturbance, if you are getting ready to serve a high-risk search warrant, if you have reason to believe that there are going to be large violent crowds. So Overwatch is typically performed by somebody with long distance or precise weapon capability who is literally either dialed in on or constantly scanning an area and or a given target, not necessarily with their finger on the trigger, but certainly with their hands on the guns.
Right.
So it's not passive, and it is not a surveillance type operation.
Yes. Right.
So if you're hanging out, if you're a police officer working a part-time gig at a football game and you're hanging out watching the crowd, that's surveillance.
Right.
If you are on top of a building looking through a scope to see if somebody's trying to shoot the orange Cheeto, you're supposed to be on Overwatch.
That's Overwatch.
That's Overwatch.
Yes. Yeah. As long as
big difference. Yes. Slow proof. They got union rules against that. But so there's a huge difference between what this guy said he was doing,
right,
and what he called what he was doing,
right.
Which the first phrase that jumps to my mind there is drugstore cowboy.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what is a guy using phraseology like that? And we'll put on at this stage of the game, we'll put on our civil litigation consultant hats. What does that mean to you? What does that tell you?
There is, when you use certain very technical phraseology dealing with law enforcement or the military, and you are not in that job, in that position, or have not been in that position, there is a set of you want to do that. And that you can very easily make a leap into intent. You're trying to interject yourself into bad situations to be a hero.
Yeah. Like the classic, guy who starts fires so he can report that there's a fire.
Right.
Yeah. So there's that. And I agree with you on that. And I think that whole, and the other aspect of that is, well, I speak the language.
I speak the language.
So when you're conducting this investigation of me, we're on the same team.
We're on the same team.
We're on the same team. We speak the same language.
Right.
We're doing the same thing. No, you don't.
No, you're not.
No, you're not. Not at all. So
I refrain from using the word LARPer in that. But that was really the first thing that comes
Poser?
to mind. Poser,
Poser.
LARPer, live ammunition role play, right? But yeah.
Yeah.
The duty to act, or the overwatch, and you're right, it's using that language. He is creating in his mind a set of conditions that he really is legally not able to. So he's not legally able to have standing on the things that he's created in his mind.
No. So, and that brings us to the next thing where he talks about, well, I saw this and I had a duty to take action. I needed to intervene. So I can tell you for a fact in regard to the Code of the Commonwealth of Virginia, but it's common law and it's fairly standard across the United States. If you are a sworn law enforcement officer, you have arrest authority, you have the authority to carry firearms into government buildings. That's one of the big keys. You can carry a gun into a state or local, federal, state or local government building. Then you probably have a duty to act. First off, there is absolutely a moral duty to act, right? If you've decided that that's what you're going to do, if you decide you're going to be a law enforcement officer, then you should take action. But like in Commonwealth of Virginia, there is a requirement that you take action. Now, it doesn't say what action you have to take, but you have to take action. So the duty to take action means that you've got to do something. Calling 911 is doing something, right? It's the bare minimum of something, but it is absolutely something. But if you don't have a duty to act, then you cannot exert force arbitrarily for the good of society or a third party. It's one thing, and we've talked about this, it's one thing you're walking through the parking lot at Harris Teeter taking your groceries out and you see a couple of thugs stomping the guy with the Korea War vet ball cap on. And you go, okay, these two 20-somethings are going to beat this 80-year-old guy to death, and you intervene. It's within eyesight. It is what it is. And it is clearly and obviously a violent situation. So you've taken it. That doesn't mean you won't get charged, doesn't mean you won't get sued, but it's understandable. If you see somebody with a gun, but it's not an active shooter situation, and herein lies, we've talked about this, herein lies the problem with active shooter situations. You can't prevent them because you don't know their active shooter situations until they start shooting. Up until then, it might be brandishing. And you may or may not be justified in a brandishing case. But I'm going to tell you, if a guy's walking across the sidewalk and he has a gun in his hand, he's not pointing at anybody. He's just walking down the sidewalk with a gun in his hand, and he's not pointing it at you or making any movements, furtive movements, and you're not law enforcement, you should not go over there and talk to him. Because as you've pointed out several times, you can't start the fight and then claim self-defense. And that's what's happened here. Because this guy has no duty to act because he's not a cop. When he goes over and confronts these guys, under what guise? Under what authority? Right? So, he doesn't have any.
He's under the authority of I'm a mall cop.
That's right.
I'm a security guard.
Right.
And the gun that he shot the kid with was issued by
the security company that he works for.
Yep.
Which that's a whole nother can of worms.
That's a whole nother can of worms. Now, so I think we understand this was a bad situation. He intervened at a time he should not have intervened. Turns out, not only was he incorrect, he was massively wrong.
Yes.
Shoots a kid 6 times. Pretty good. Shot 6 rounds, hit him 6 times.
Way better than the national law enforcement
Right.
average.
So, but the police immediately arrested him.
Yes.
Right? And kind of what we laid out here was what was in the initial news articles. Now,
Tell us what happened in the follow-on.
so the follow-up to this is the video shows a very, very different situation. It does show him approach the individuals, brandishing a firearm. It shows the young man who had the airsoft gun immediately set it down, raise his hand, and step away from it. It does substantiate they were telling him that it was a BB gun. Not that they have audio, but it does appear,
You can read it from the body
right,
language.
that from that. He then assaults one of the youths and straddles him, and then is brandishing gun at one of the other, at the individual that had the BB gun. So here's the airsoft gun. So here's where it appears to deviate from his story. Is that the individual that was shot was the one that initially had the airsoft gun. He had placed it down and he had stepped away. He assaulted one of the other 3. Kid that had the gun is the one that's walking away. And he wants no part of getting shot. And when he turns to leave, he gets shot once in the side and the other rounds in his back.
Because we've all seen this right before the foot pursuit starts.
Right?
Got my hands up, and then I do the dirty double to look for the quick fit. And then as I start to run, my hands come down into a running motion. Yep.
So the interesting thing to me is if the individual that had the gun, let me throw this at you. If an individual had a gun and they placed it on the ground, what are your thoughts that individual has? The general dirtbag is carrying more than one gun.
Probably not.
Probably not. And that to me is where things begin to, but again, it is you have one, the kid's turning to leave and he runs off, but he had assaulted one.
Yeah.
Right. And it was and according to the video, the police, it was a physical assault. It was not simply verbal commands.
Yeah.
So he was escalating the situation. You've got 3 juveniles who are, they got a 51-year-old man pointing a gun at them. What do you expect me to do?
Yeah. Well, a 51-year-old man who's not a uniformed police officer or has not pulled out a badge and said, Broken Pelvis, Nebraska PD or wherever the fuck he is.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a different animal.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
And to go back to your point of, do I think it's a better than average chance that once the guy's put the gun down, that he's probably not armed? My opinion on that is based on hundreds of interactions over 3 decades.
I understand that. I understand.
Which
again,
if this guy was a cop,
we would have likely had a different outcome.
Yes, not JoJo the, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, a whole different animal.
Right.
Yeah. So I was like, I read the initial one. I went, Now, I'm going to deviate,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to talk about the moral high ground here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably going to piss some people off, but that's okay. So when I saw this and I heard about this,
Mm-hmm.
I started reading it, and I immediately thought, this is probably not good.
Mm-hmm.
However,
Mm-hmm.
there is probably more to this than I know. So I'm not immediately going to go, well, this guy's in the right because he's out here trying to save the world. And I'm not going to go, well, this guy's in the fucking wrong because he's a jackass. I'm going to wait and see what happens through the course of the investigation and find out what information comes to light so we can get a better, broader picture of what's going on. As opposed to saying, well, I saw a portion of a video and I didn't see all of it, and I don't know what happened right before or right after the video that I saw, and so the cops are absolutely wrong and should go to prison.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I could be talking about recent events. I could be talking about events from the early 1990s. In either case, the point of the matter is, especially if you're in law enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
you should know that you need to wait until the rest of the investigation goes on and is done before you start espousing opinions, because maybe there's a key piece of information that you don't have access to, you know? And if you are law enforcement or military and you preface your statement with that,
Mm-hmm.
what you say carries weight.
Mm-hmm.
And if what you say based on the information you had right now,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't wait 2 days to find out everything else that you could find out,
Mm-hmm.
and now the information and now your opinion is based on faulty or not enough information, what you've said still carries weight.
Absolutely.
And then people can go, well, see,
See?
even law enforcement says that these people are in the wrong. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't jump to any conclusions on that one.
Right.
I read the first one. I went, I don't like the way this sounds, but let's look into this. And then I started reading other articles coming from other angles. And then, you know, we got to where I got to the point where 90% of the information about this matched up, no matter where it was coming from. And then the anomalous information was what this guy said, and it was anomalous to what was in the video.
Right.
So there you go.
Yeah. So I think the interesting point that you know we discussed earlier was 6 rounds, 6 hits.
Way better than national average for law enforcement.
So what does it tell you?
Tells me that this guy has spent some time on the range. Yep.
So
because he got 6 rounds off, and we'll call it 4 of them before the subject could fall.
Right.
Because torso hits, you put 2 torso hits on somebody, they usually don't go very far. They usually start, gravity usually starts to take effect. So this guy, under stress, and I don't know what the distances were, but under stress, this guy gets 6 rounds off, scores 6 hits. That's a 100% hit ratio. That is way better than the average law enforcement across America. So the guy has clearly spent time, energy, and effort to go to the range and get good at marksmanship and management of his weapon.
So we had this, and I'm going to throw this back to you. To put your civil litigation hat on, what is your tack? What is the strategy there as the attorney, with him as the
defendant?
As the defendant.
I'm working for the plaintiff.
You're working, yeah. What is your tack for that, knowing that he has that type of accuracy?
if he has that type of accuracy, if he spent the time and energy to go to the range and the money, because you can't get that good with the little laser dry fire. I don't care what.
Oh no! Oh, absolutely not.
So if he spent enough time to go to the range and spend enough money on ammo to get that good, to shoot that fast under those set of circumstances, then I'd be interested in knowing how much time he has spent learning what the law says he can do. I'd like to know. I'd like to put him on the stand, and I'd like to ask him right here, right now, what's the definition of deadly force, and when may deadly force be utilized? And then I'd like him, and then of course I'd like him to explain why he felt that there was a deadly force threat when the subject was fleeing,
Right.
and under what set of circumstances could he shoot a fleeing felon? Because lots of people don't realize that you actually can shoot people in the back. It's not optimal, but there are circumstances when it's legal. I'd like to know if he knows that. I'm going to bet that he didn't. I'm going to bet that he spent all of his time in preparation for shooting somebody,
Right.
as opposed to preparation for when can I not, should I not deploy my weapon?
Right.
And realistically, and I think most law enforcement agencies out there, if you pull training records, I think what you'll find is you'll probably find a 4.5 to 5 hour to 1 ratio of legal to shooting skill set. Right? So for every 1 hour the average police officer spends on the range, they spend 4 hours learning about when they should or should not shoot, and when they can and cannot shoot. And I don't think this guy did that portion of his homework, which leads us to the other, since this is an issued weapon and he's a security guard, I want to know what his company has taught him. Because it's easy not to know this guy and sit here and go, well, this guy's a fucking drugstore cowboy and he's a fucking whack job, and you know, he's out here looking to manufacture the opportunity to shoot somebody.
Right.
Well, maybe he is. Or maybe he works for the John Wick security company. These dudes who, you know, we've started a security company, and, you know, and we're kind of like Blackwater. You know, these guys, because they're out there. You get a herd of dudes who couldn't get hired by a police department, and now they're doing this thing. And, you know, it's an echo chamber. There's echo chambers everywhere. So it's an echo chamber where you go to work, and it's all about, we're going to shoot the guy who's going to come hijack the truck, or shoot the guy who's going to rob the 7-Eleven, or all of this stuff.
And shoot the guy trespassing on the construction yard.
Yeah, you know. So that could be a thing. This guy could be the victim of improper training. I don't think it's just that, right? Because I think it's opinion based on experience, but I think the kind of guys who are using that kind of phraseology, because prior to becoming a police officer, I worked for a security company, and there were the guys who were security guards who were like, this is an overnight job, it's easy to job, is what I do. And then there were I'd like to be a cop, I want to be on the SWAT team, but I can't get hired by a police department. And some of the guys who run security agencies are those dudes, and they hire dudes like them. And then it's this whole manifestation. It's really no different than some of the training organizations that we see floating out here. You know, come spend a weekend with us and we'll teach you how to do CQB. Right. Well, why does a civilian need CQB? Right. Yeah. So, but I'd be interested if I was working for the plaintiffs on that one. I'd like to get the training records. I'd like to interview the people who he works for. I'd like to interview the people who provide him his training and his certification. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, right? Yeah. For people that are providing instruction of understanding your students. Yeah. Watching your students, listening to your students, and looking for those potential triggers.
Yeah.
Right. Because and let's say all of our training, there are discussions of when not to. A lot more of the when not to than the when to.
Yep.
Right. And again, it's as we've discussed before. You walk up to an altercation that's in progress. You can move to end. You can move to end that altercation and be on the wrong side of it.
Yep.
Right. You can be on the side of, just because the guy's losing does not mean he isn't the aggressor.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly right.
And that's piece. Obviously this is a wholly different thing, but it becomes one of those things.
Yeah.
No crime has happened.
Yeah.
He just assumed a crime was going to happen.
Yeah.
And he's going to stop it.
Yeah.
And this isn't a minority report. And the reality is if he was right, he'd be hailed as a hero. But he was wrong, and he killed the kid.
Yeah.
But we don't live in the minority report,
Nope.
right? So there is no, well, it's a pre-crime. He was gonna commit a crime.
Yeah.
But you have no legal authority to brandish your weapon and hold 3 individuals hostage.
Yeah.
Because essentially that's what you're doing.
Oh, yeah. Had he been in Virginia,
Yeah.
right?
In Virginia,
So
right.
let's call a spade a spade. If he had done this in Virginia Beach, in say 2011, near the oceanfront,
Officer Sutton was working.
Detective Sutton
at the time. Yeah,
Sutton would charge this dumbass with 3 counts of abduction, a count of malicious assault, 3 counts of use of a firearm in the commission of a felony. Minimally out of charge.
Well, and then there's that whole,
And murder, obviously. Yeah.
Discharging a firearm in the.
You know what? Well,
Is that even worth it?
Actually,
At that point, is that even worth it?
Well, so I had a sergeant one time when I was in robbery. Came in and said, "You charged this person with 32 counts of stuff," and I went, "Yeah." Why? I said, "Every law that I could find that they broke, I charged them with. Some of them are misdemeanors." I go, "Look, if the Commonwealth wants to dismiss all but 2 of them, that's their business.
But
What law did he break? I have probable cause, not probably cause. That's a little bit different.
Not probably cause.
Probable cause that he committed these crimes." And a magistrate agreed to give me one. So there you go.
Yeah.
Because I think it's chicken shit, though it is a useful tool, to know that this guy committed 12 offenses and get 3 warrants today, and let him get out on bond, and then get 3 more warrants tomorrow, and then let him get out on another bond and get 3 more warrants later on. I'm not saying I have or have not done that to people who deserved it, but legal. Tough strategy. But yeah.
Tough strategy. Alrighty.
Yeah, me and Dave Adamak did that to a guy who was a pervert. We arrested him every other day for a week.
Well, that.
New information kept coming up. New information kept coming up. We didn't have 100% information on this charge yesterday, but we have it today, so that's why we went and got a warrant today. I didn't realize that you'd bonded out. Once I realized you bonded out, that's why you came to your house. We were busy, which is why we came to your house at midnight on a Wednesday. You already arrested me. We're arresting you again. I'm not coming. Oh, yes, you are. Trust me. You're in 20 minutes, you won't be in that house. I promise you that.
One way or the other.
That's right.
But you were not a security guard.
No, I was not.
You were not a security guard.
Not since the 1980s.
Yeah. So, anything else?
Yeah. So, if you're a security guard, if you're not a security guard, if you have decided to carry a firearm for your own defensive purposes, and then you understand that carrying a firearm for your defensive purposes may find you utilizing that firearm in the defense of others. That's a legal thing that can happen. Before you embark on that everyday adventure, you really do need to understand what the law says, where you are, what you can and cannot do, where you can and cannot go. And you need to be able to identify as much of the situation as possible before you make your decisions. Because there are some decisions that you don't get a do-over on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've said this time and time again. If you're going to engage in the use of deadly force, you have to know that there are consequences to that.
Yeah.
Whether you're right or whether you're wrong.
Yeah.
And if you're wrong, it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah.
Right?
And so everybody knows, because everybody,
even if you're right.
yeah, even if you're right.
Right.
And so everybody knows, because we all watch TV and movies, and that's the world's worst place to get information. So you're aware of this.
Oh, wait. You mean I can't be chasing the South African with diplomatic immunity, shooting people across the city and leaving bodies,
and go running down the street with an MP5
and continue to run after you shot somebody,
and then well, more importantly, and then the next day you're on a stakeout.
Yeah.
If you were involved in a lethal force encounter, even as an on-duty police officer, you will be the subject of a criminal investigation, and everything in your life will be suspended for quite some time. And even if it is absolutely a good shoot, that does not prevent you from being sued. If you are an active law enforcement officer working for an agency, then qualified immunity will come into play. And while you will be named in the suit, your agency is the one that will take the brunt of that. But if you are John Q. Citizen and you shoot somebody who is trying to harm you, there is a better than average chance that their estate, family, friends, whomever, are going to get some ambulance chaser, and you're going to get sued. So you better be prepared for it. That's why we always stress you need to know everything to the left of bang. You need to know what you need to know during the bang, and everything to the right of bang. How to prevent the fight. If you can't prevent the fight, how to win the fight. If you had to be in a fight, how to survive post-fight and get on with your life. And if you are getting your training from somebody who does not stress and emphasize that, you really do need to rethink who you're getting your training from. In my humble opinion. That humble part.
It's very humble.
Sorry, that's me. Me and Sean Johnson. Any rocks, bottles, bombs, and hand grenades?
No. If you're not subscribed and you're still watching, you should subscribe.
I don't know why you didn't subscribe already.
And if you've gotten this far, you should have liked it.
Yeah, really. And if you're thinking about buying an SR-24 or SR-22, an SR-22 from Ruger,
don't.
Well, if you want to buy one, don't. But if you do buy one, don't take it to Arsenal Performance and Gunworks, because they won't work on it for you.
No.
Because it's a nightmare. Same thing with your Smith & Wesson 5.7 or 22 Magnum or High Points or Bursas. Funny though, I say I'm not going to work on a Bursa. I have a llama I'm working on.
You're working on a llama now?
Well,
That's fun.
it's a Llama 380 1911, and I'm going to make a Day of the Dead race gun out of it. Because why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, hey, before we go,
Oh, go ahead.
do you know when a pun becomes a dad joke? Once it's apparent. I told that to Reagan the other day, and I think I ruined half her day. It was great. Be safe.
We'll see you next week.